Hello students, welcome you all for the lecture series on tourism. Food is any substance or material eaten to provide nutritional support, fuel for the body or especially in mammals for pleasure. Food is usually of plant or animal origin and contains essential nutrients such as carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins or minerals. Food is ingested and assimilated by an organism and converted to energy in order to maintain life. A beverage is always a food, though a food is not necessarily a beverage. A beverage can generally be described as any liquid specifically consumed by drinking, whether as food or only for purpose of hydration. In addition to fulfilling the need for nutrition, food and beverages form an essential part of culture of humans and other communal animals. Food and beverage outlets are the areas in a hotel where food and beverage are sold to both in-house and outside guests. They also define as any establishment that provides food and drink. In this episode, let us study the following aspects: different types of food outlets, different types of beverage outlets, types and styles of service, the role of food and beverage in Indian tourism and economy, future of food and beverage distribution in India. Let us start our discussion with the different types of food outlets. First one is special restaurant. These restaurants deal in a particular type of cuisine like Chinese, Italian or French. Each and every aspect of the restaurant is typical and related to the area of region of community whose food is being served. The food, service, uniform, decor, etc. are ethnic and authentic of the area whose cuisine and restaurant specializes upon. When one enters into such kind of restaurant, one can feel the culture and tradition of that area. These restaurants may be attached to a hotel or may independently exist. They have specific hours of function and normally more expensive than ordinary restaurants. Next is multi-cuisine restaurant. These restaurants deal with more than one cuisine like Indian, Chinese and continental. They are not as exclusively as the special restaurants. There is no emphasis on adherence to the culture and tradition of a particular area of region or community. They may be attached to a hotel or may independently exist. They generally have specific time of operation when attached to a hotel. They may be operating on a straight shift from morning to night when independently existing. They are not as highly priced as the special restaurants. Next is grill room. These kinds of hotels are generally attached to the star hotels, although they can be found independently existing also. They specialize in grills and barbecue items only. The kitchen is separated from the service area by a glass partition so that guests can see the chef preparing the food. This gives rise to impulse of buying. The guests are normally assured of better hygienic condition as they can see the actual food preparation. Coming to fast food outlets. They are generally not attached to a hotel and are found independently existing. They serve fast foods which are easy to prepare and easy to carry. These outlets provide very limited seating arrangements and people are not encouraged to sit and pastime in these places. Service is done in disposable plates and packets. Patrons are supposed to get their food from across the counter. There may be one person to look after the clearance and cleanliness of the plates. Very limited service is provided here. Next is pizza outlets. These are outlets that mostly stand alone. These outlets have been a recent development in India over the past decades. Their food mainly deals with pizzas. They also offer food and beverage like pasta, garlic bread, soft drinks, ice creams, etc. In India, chains like US Pizza, Pizza Hut, Smoking Joe's, etc. are very popular. This trend has given rise to the franchising business, hence making pizza a youth food trend along with family and office street zones, basically covering all age groups of people. These outlets also deal with home delivery and takeaway. They usually have a moderate or minimum seating arrangement in an informal manner, or tables are attached to walls with high chairs. Here one can enjoy hot and fresh food. One can also have the optional at most places to plan their own pizza or per the available ingredients in the menu. Next is bakery. These outlets may be attached to a hotel, pastry shop, or may be stand alone. They may or may not have a seating arrangement. They may have a kitchen or place attached to the outlet where the bakery items are prepared. The ready to eat food items are then put at the counter for display. The food items mainly deal with various bread preparations. The guest can then choose their food and make payment over or at the end of the counter. Next is different types of beverage outlets. First one is bar. These food and beverage outlets deal with the alcoholic beverages only. They may be attached to a hotel or independently existing. They have certain specific hours of operation and the law strictly governs the operation. Their hours of operation, account, location and client to whom they should serve are governed and regulated by the law enforcing agency. Next is coffee shop. This is generally attached to a hotel. In a 5-star hotel, the coffee shop operates round the clock. It can independently exist. The service is very informal and emphasis is on pace of service. Service is generally snacks and very light meals. The meals part is not as elaborate as the restaurant. Prices are not excessive as the restaurants. Although the coffee shop is operational round the clock, there are meal timings when the certain items are available which are not available at other times. There are some dishes which are available all 24 hours. Coming to pub. A pub generally independently exists which serves only beer. The atmosphere in a pub is generally very informal. Most pubs have a very informal seating arrangements and generally designed to suit the likings and requirements of the youth. They also have specific hours of operation and the law like a bar governs operations. Books of inventory and accounts are maintained as per the government regulation and are supposed to produce them before the concerned authority as and when required. Coming to cafeteria. These generally independently exist and are found in railway stations and airports. The service is generally self-service. Food is displayed in the counter and the guest helps himself in picking up the food as per his liking. As he moves along the counter, the finally pays the bill at the end of the counter. Sometimes payment of the bill may be through coupon also. Very informal atmosphere exists in these outlets and prices are not very high. Next is coffee bar. This is a very recent development and becoming very popular. These outlets deal with only coffee. They specialize in different types of coffee. Both alcoholic and non-alcoholic coffees are served here. The alcoholic coffees are commonly called as specialty coffee. Coming to chai bars. Just like coffee bars, these outlets also deals with only one kind of beverage, that is tea. In India, tea in the Hindi language is known as chai. These outlets may mostly have an informal atmosphere and seating arrangement. The menu here includes variety of tea based on different regions, methods of preparation. These outlets may also provide light snacks on the menu to go along with the beverage. These outlets may be stand-alone or may be attached to a restaurant. If attached to a restaurant, the same premises is used for service with a different menu card or tent card only for tea. Now coming to types and styles of services. Depending upon different factors like the client, the location, the volume of the operation, peak hour service can be of many different types to suit the requirements of a particular establishment. An establishment can have a particular type of service or a combination of service depending upon the requirement of the restaurant. The different types of service which one can come across are silver service. This type of service involves service from entire dishes and platters with the help of service spoon and fork onto the guest plate by the steward or the waiter. This is a very formal type of service which is carried out in a very exclusive restaurants. Such kind of service is required skilled and professional staff. The service is slower in comparison to plated service. This is also known as English service. Next kind of service is plated service. This kind of service involves service of pre-plated food. The food is pre-portioned, placed and garnished on the plate itself in the kitchen. The steward is supposed to just place the plate in front of the guest. Such kind of service does not require much skill and generally carried out in the coffee shop where emphasis is on the pace of service and not on the quality of service. This is also called American service. Next, coming to French service. This service involves presentation of food to the guest individually by the service staff and the guest themselves. This is also known as butler service. Such kind of service is generally seen in the military establishment. Next is Russian service. This kind of service involves the layup of the table with the food already presented for the guests to have themselves. Coming to Guerdin service. This service involves preparation of food guerdin or the side table in front of the full view of the guests. Guerdin service involves operations like flambering, carving, jointing, etc. This kind of service generally requires special skills and generally seen in very high class restaurant. One of the most common items which are prepared on the guerdin is salads. In guerdin service, the main preparation are done in the kitchen and the final touch is given on the guerdon inside the restaurant in the full view of the guests. Coming to bar counter service. Here the service is done on the semicircular counter to the guests who are seated on the other side of the counter. Generally seen in the bars and nowadays seen in some fast food outlets as well. Buffet service. This service involves presentation of food on the buffet counter in chafing dishes and large platters, and the guests are supposed to help themselves. A stand-up buffet, the only cutlery kept on the buffet is fork, and guests have to help themselves from a separate counter for water as well. The guests are supposed to keep their dirty plate at a designed place and the steward are supposed to clean them at time. When a lot of guests are to be served in a short span of time, this service is carried out. Room service. This is done from the room service department of the hotel to guests staying in the room of the hotel only. Here, the service is done with the help of trays and trolleys. The trolleys are generally attached with the hot cases to keep the food hot. Here the food is pre-plated from kitchen and when it is carried on a tray, the plate is covered with a plate cover. Next is cafeteria service. Here the foods are displayed in the counters. The guests are supposed to move around the counter to pick up the food as per their liking and pay at the end of the counter. In certain cases, the payment is done in way of coupons. Such kind of service is generally seen in railway station and airports. Free flow. Here, the guest can freely move to any service point, but the exit is generally through one particular point where bill may be paid. The advantage is that the guest does not have to stay in a queue for his turn. Automatic vending machine. This kind of service involves service from a machine requiring a coin or token of particular denomination and the products comes out through an outlet in the machine itself. These machines are not extensively used in India and the use is still confined to tea, coffee and packed milk. Food court. There are counters of different cuisine and separate dining area. Food can be picked up from the chosen area and it can be eaten in the dining area. Coming to supermarket. Here there are island service counters and a separate dining area. Here food can be picked up from any counter without having to wait or stand in a queue and can be eaten in the designated dining area. Next, we shall move on to the role of food and beverage in Indian tourism and economy. India is one of the world's largest producers as well as consumers of food. Changing food consumption patterns of India's population is expected to not only increase consumption value but also shift people's diet qualitatively towards richer, processed foods which will force increased commodity requirements. The food and beverage industry comprises three distinct categories: agricultural and horticulture produce, processed foods and beverages, and food and beverage retail. The food and beverage food service industry provides both direct and indirect employment to millions of Indians. Latest industry estimates place direct employment at 5 million workers. In addition, there are 10 million street vendors in India. The food and beverage food service sector in India comprises two distinct market segments: organized and unorganized. The organized segments account for 16% of the industry and is worth about $2 billion. The food supply chain in India is complex, less developed, and involves numerous small stakeholders at various stages: farmers, wholesalers, food manufacturers, retailers, and multiple intermediaries who add little value to the product. India's annual growth of 8% is boosting incomes rapidly. According to the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, per capita income surged to $1,265 in 2010 from $857 in 2006, an almost 50% increase. Growing affluence and higher spending capacity provides a huge opportunity for the food service sector. With higher disposable incomes, consumers do not hesitate to spend more on eating out. By 2025, India will have 583 million people living on incomes of above $4,380. The shift to nuclear families and with both parents working and bringing in dual income in most urban households, lifestyle and routines of people have changed, including food habits. There is increased demand for affordable food on the go and prepared ingredients to make cooking faster. Indian consumers are becoming ever more conscious on the quality of the food and drinks they consume. Rising awareness and incomes among upwardly mobile urban consumers are making them care more about health and fitness. The mushrooming of juice bars and kiosks selling salads and wraps are cases in point. Consumers are opting for healthy options at the supermarkets as well. According to Euromonitor International, urban Indian consumers are looking for easy to consume fortified beverages because they are concerned they are not consuming enough nutrients due to their erratic eating habits and schedules. The venture of Indian restaurants into a variety of global cuisines is having a positive impact on the food and beverage sector. Indo-Chinese food has risen in popularity to almost become a staple cuisine across the country, and new favorites such as Mexican, Italian, Thai and Japanese food are tickling the enjoyment of Indian consumers. The development of malls and multiplexes has provided the food and beverage industry with ideal spaces for operations. Malls have allowed new formats such as food courts to enter the market and offer consumers across to multiple cuisines. Next, coming to future of food and beverage distribution in India. India's food and drink distribution channels are the least developed amongst the world's major developing countries. Trade sources comment that its channels are at least 20 years behind those in Asian countries like Malaysia, Thailand and Indonesia, which started developing in the late 1980s and about 10 years behind those now seen in China. The main reasons for this situation are government policy, a regulatory system that protects an old trading system that has been disappearing in Asia since mid-1980s, and the inherent protectionism that prevails in India's food and drink market today, both retail and food service. The retail industry is now in a substantial growth phase where the drivers are increasing personal and household incomes, urbanization and better financing systems and increasing credit facility usage. This is taking place in a highly constrained policy and regulatory environment as mentioned earlier. The future of food and drink retailing in India is highly complex. Protests erupted across the country in 2007 when Reliance Industries, India's biggest company, tried to set up a larger network of supermarkets. Most analysts think it highly unlikely that there will be a change in the FDI regulations in the short to medium term. While this is the case, the DFI or RPG joint venture have a goal of jointly developing 200 food world stores across India in different formats such as hypermarkets, supermarkets, express or convenience stores and higher end concept stores in future. The original deadline for this was 2009. However, this target was missed by a significant margin because of a range of different problems. While the deadline was missed, DFI senior management are confident that this target will be reached over the next 10 years, further illustrating the point that India is a market where a long-term view is required about business development. Following aspects are considered to be the new trends in food and beverage sector in India. More international players entering Indian market, franchising, kiosks and food courts are increasing in popularity, expansion into smaller cities and towns, localization of cuisines. So now we can conclude the session by saying that food and beverage outlets are the ones in which the food is going to be served in different styles and methods. Food and beverage outlets mainly include restaurants, pizza outlets, bakeries, bars, pubs, cafeteria and so on. These outlets provide customers the option to choose different types of eaters and sometimes to cook themselves just like in grill rooms. And these kinds of outlets are the new adaptation of cosmopolitan culture in every city. And these outlets provide people to have an opportunity to have food and beverages without any risk of traveling for far distances, and also contributes to any country's economy. So students, hope you enjoyed this session. We will meet in next episode. Till then, take care. Thank you.